Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Talk in Town. As if yesterday wasn't enough, 3 Talk in Towns, 2 fixture show, a cricket show, all available to watch back at any time. Many thanks to everyone who tuned in yesterday. We are partnered, got to get this in for Gov, partnered by Stowmarket Osteopaths. Give Freddie a call on 01449 613 633. Don't live your life in pain. Tell him the Gov sent you. Anyway, tonight we will be joined by Craig Forrest shortly for his hat-trick appearance. We've had Craig on twice. Once it was back in the COVID days on a Sunday night. We done 2 hours available to watch back at any time. And then 2 years ago, we done a 30-year celebration special with Craig and Romeo Zondervan. Brilliant show. Also available to watch back. So go and have a look at them if you haven't seen them. Anyway, tonight we are aiming for 200 likes. If you're watching live, hit the like button. If you're watching on catch up, also hit the like button. Hit subscribe. We are looking to get to 6,000. We're about just under 380. Short of that target. So if you're watching and you don't subscribe, and I know there's a lot of people who don't subscribe, Gov said, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but please hit that button. It's totally free and takes literally a second. Anyway, tonight I'm flying solo. Matt's busy with work. Gov's got a bit of a sore throat, but he will be dropping questions in. So if you want to get your questions into Craig, please drop them in the live chat. We will also be dropping a live link. So if you want to come on and have a chat to Craig, ask any questions. Mainly tonight, we're going to talk on Town in the Premier League, because that's obviously where we're back to, because obviously we've done the look back at 91, 92. We looked at Craig's career in his first show on, but we probably will go back there anyway, because it's my favourite season, 91, 92. And we'll probably chat about Liverpool in the FA Cup, because that is the first fixture back in the Premier League. I've got the fixtures here. I've dropped Craig the fixtures. I'm sure he's had them anyway. I'm going to get his predictions on the first 10, which me and George done last night. So that should be good. Anyway, tonight we are pleased to welcome back Craig Forrest. 312 appearances for Town. 263 in the league. 2000 CONCACAF Gold Cup winner, Craig. And I think, did you get player of the tournament?
I did.
There you go. And look at that lovely top you're wearing. It's almost, you must have had one of these.
Yeah, I've got one of those somewhere. What year was that?
I think it would probably be in about 88 to 91. It's not the original. I've had it made. Someone on Twitter made it. You know what this reminds me of? This always reminds me of Peter Trevivian. Because I always remember when he rocked this, mate.
What a good coat.
Anyway, brilliant to have you back on for the third time. How are you? Tell everybody where you are, what the weather's like, what time it is, all that jazz.
It's hot. It's hot as hell here in Toronto right now. It's almost too hot to go out and golf.
What's hot in the 30s?
Yeah, it's in the 30s. 33 degrees today and humid.
Well, it's about 20 here. We've not really had a summer yet. We're into June. We've had a lot of rain. It's not been bad the last couple of days. But obviously, Craig, the last time we had you on, Town were a League One team. So 2 years on, unbelievable. Town are now back in the Premier League for the first time since 2002. I mean, what are your thoughts on the last 2 years? Obviously, watching from afar.
Well, didn't get a lot of games in Division 1. And before that, kind of lost interest a little bit, like I think a lot of maybe Ipswich Town fans did. Poor ownership group. The team looked more likely to go to the conference than it ever did the Premier League. Yeah, it was a pretty sad state. And to see what's happened over the last less than 2 years and where they've gone is really incredible. Like, it really is incredible. It's a special club. We know that, but it's punched above its weight for decades. And we've had a couple poor ones, but you know, here we are back in the Premier League again and in top flight. It's really astonishing. And it's a it's a credit to the new ownership group and how they've gone about it. Obviously, the management and has been excellent, and the players, the way they've responded to that has been top notch.
Yeah, I listened to your podcast. You can give it a plug if you want. Footy
Footy
Prime.
Prime, the podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
I listened to one with Milts on.
That's right.
He went into, didn't he? He went into the ownership. Obviously, Marcus Evans, previous owner, and he worked for the club, Milts. Well, he obviously played, and you played with him, and he was there working, and then he left. And I remember that time when he left. I'm thinking, when you've had someone who's played at the club, then he's worked at the club for that long. Sorry about the dogs barking. I think my wife's just on, Craig. But when you've had someone like Simon Milton associated with the club for that long, and he leaves, that to me was alarm bells were ringing, and I'm thinking, this isn't good. Because he said, didn't he, on your podcast about going into work, everyone was negative. Everyone was moaning. And I mean, that must go all through the club and to playing wise as well, not just backroom stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been through that on both ends of it when, things are going really, really badly and hard to stop that rot. And sometimes, they could just, the negativity goes through the club. And then on the other hand, when things are going well, I mean, obviously winning is a cure for everything. But the way they've gone about it is special too. And the way the Ipswich has played it almost, I mean, it's incredible with the managers that we've had in the history of this club. And we know Kieran is going to go on to other things eventually. And when he decided to stay, I thought, that it's not only brilliant just because we want him to stay. It's, in an age where money talks and clubs drag players and managers away all the time, and eventually, that's going to be the case. It's refreshing to see. I mean, obviously he's been well looked after, don't get me wrong, but it's really refreshing to see, and to see him get a chance with this team in the Premier League is about as exciting as it gets. Yeah,
I've said on our shows, it was, but obviously it's when you have the teams of Chelsea and Man United and Brighton. I always talk about Brighton, Craig, and I think they're a club who town can sort of model themselves on. I remember obviously when you won the league back in 91-92, you played Brighton that last game of the season. I think they got relegated that day. They obviously didn't have a ground for a long time. I went to the Withdean Stadium. It was just an athletic stadium, but they've had great ownership, and now they've built themselves up. And you think this is what town, I think, can model themselves on. There's a number of clubs in the Premier League who, from watching town for like 40 years, who I always remember teams like Bournemouth, Brentford. They were always like League Two teams, and we've been, because of ownership, and they've had better owners than we had, they've overtaken us. But I think now we are obviously back in the Premier League, and it's going to take time to sort of catch up where they are. But I think we're more than capable of catching them and modelling ourselves on them. And this is key to when Kieran was linked to Brighton and Chelsea and Man United, that he stayed, because all that hard work he put in, Craig. I think when I listened to his interview, it was when he signed the contract and he said he was staying. And he said he's got to think of his family. And you obviously know, you've played football. It's a short career, even in management as well, because at the minute, he's one of the most talked about coaches in the country. But we all know that can change. It doesn't last forever. So he was probably thinking, maybe I might leave. But it would have been a crying shame for me, personally, if he wasn't the manager to lead us that first game in the Premier League. And obviously the fixtures came out yesterday, Liverpool at home. If it wasn't him walking down that touchline, with all the hard work that he'd done, he had to be the man for me.
Yeah. And you'd have to change your tattoo, right?
What do you think to it? Come on, give your honest opinion.
I love it.
You've never seen anything like it, have you?
No.
My missus thinks it's absolutely horrendous.
Is that right? Well,
yes. She said, "Can you not wear shorts, please?" Well, hang on. When the summer, what am I going to be wearing trousers all the time?
Oh, so she wasn't with you when you had it done then?
No, she wasn't a fan. I got one when we got promoted from League One. I went to Fleetwood the last game, and one of my mates owns a tattoo place in Blackpool. And I said then, if we get promoted to the Premier League, I'll have his face or some. I wasn't sure. Never thinking, Craig, that the next season we would score what 96 points, score 90 odd goals, lose 6 games. I mean, how much did you see of the season? Do you get the games out there in the Championship?
Yeah, well, DAZN carries them, but they don't carry all of them. So, and you don't sometimes find out until like almost like until Saturday, and you're looking through the schedule, and you're just, oh no, they're not showing Ipswich. But they showed them a little bit more near the end of the season, which was great. They showed the last game, which was fantastic. Watching all the fans on the pitch and everything, it just brought back some.
Did that take you back to? Did that take you back to that Brighton game in 91, 92?
Oh yeah, and the parade too. I mean, the flare, the blue flares were amazing and just looked spectacular. I mean, you were obviously there, and it was a pretty special time.
Yeah, I think like when I had you on before, I say like 91, 92. Growing up, I was like 15, 16 then, and that was like my first sort of success watching Town, and it's always got a special place in my heart. And I've said to you before, I still think that team is undervalued, you know, because I thought it was an amazing job that John Lowe and all the players did. And I've got young kids now who've never look. We've all got we're all growing up fast and getting old, but there's a generation of fans out there who've never ever seen Town in the Premier League. And look, I probably, and I'm not the only person. There's probably a lot of us probably thought, would we ever see Town back in the Premier League?
Well, it's a difficult world to live in or in amongst. I think about a couple of years ago that even they're selling their young players, where we used to, as a club for decades, generate and develop our own players. And yeah, eventually they would go, like Terry Butcher, Russell Osmond, and the list goes on and on. Paul Mariner, Brazil, you just, but you use them. Johnny Wark went to Liverpool too. Like, you got to use them for a certain period of time. And it got to a stage now where these big clubs are coming and poaching them, the good players at, 500,000, a million, 2 million, whatever. And you don't even get a chance to actually use them at all.
I'm just muting you because the dogs are barking. I don't want to keep spoiling it. Yeah, look,
I'm now and cat here too.
Look, we've always been a club, haven't we? Who've sort of prided ourselves on young players, and we have lost that over the last few years, and we'd lost a lot of things. And when I was listening to that Milt's interview, obviously he talked about the community trust that was disbanded, and like you know yourself, having played for the club and lived in the area, it's a one club town, isn't it? Ipswich Town, the community and wider area of Suffolk. Mm-hmm. And then you're having Norwich coming in and getting in the schools and that, Craig. And that just, for me, that wasn't right, and it didn't sit right with me. And it's great now that obviously Mark Ashton's come in and they've got that back. And I mean, the feel around the town, I mean, the last game of the season, obviously the scenes afterwards, you see we're on the pitch, and then the town was, I've never, ever, Craig, seen anything like it. It was like every pub you went in, it was absolutely, you couldn't get in the door. It was absolutely rammed. But look, we're back in the Premier League. I don't know if you've looked at the fixtures. You've probably had a glance at them.
Well, I saw the first two, and then I think I fainted. I'm not sure.
It's quite funny. We done a show yesterday, and I did predict on Sunday's show Liverpool, because I think Liverpool, more than any team, normally play a promoted team first day of the season. But it's got to be a good time to play them, hasn't it? New manager Arne Slot coming in, Euros, players away. I think Copa America. Yeah, we could catch some cold.
And then the whole buzz around the start of it, the energy that the Ipswich players are going to have. I was looking back at the schedule back in '92, the inaugural year of the Premier League, and we had Aston Villa at home. We drew. Then we had Wimbledon, which we beat. And then we had Manchester United away. We drew. Liverpool home. We drew
2-2, wasn't it? I remember Kiwami scored.
That's
last
right.
Minute, that was the game. I think you were in goal when Dean Saunders got the penalty at the North Stand end.
That's right.
I don't think you touched him.
I might have got him.
Oh, you did. You're not supposed to. Don't say that, because I was not thinking it's not a penalty that day. I'm not thinking, but look, it's going to be so exciting to build up to. Obviously, now people are wanting signings, which obviously they're working hard to do. But that build up to the week, can you take yourself back to that build up when obviously you played Villa that first game, and what's so you've gone from playing in, obviously it was Division 2, was it then? It was the old Division 2, was it? And then it was the first season in the Premier League. So what was it like, sort of going from playing in that division to your first season in the Premier League? It was obviously the first season with Sky got involved in. I remember the advert with Walkie was on. All the players, they had the dancing girls at games. They had fireworks. It was just football was changing then, wasn't it?
Yeah, we felt it was a little more Americanized for sure. But I mean, leading up to it, because I had never played in the top flight before, I mean, the anticipation was incredible. And getting ready for that first game, we knew the intensity was going to change, but we didn't know how much because we hadn't experienced it. And when we saw just how much it had changed, and the parking lot press grew a lot because that was what it was back then. All the journalists were meeting you by your car and trying to get something stirred up, and didn't even have press rooms back in the day. It was really kind of unprepared for it in some ways. But the growth of it was what really caught everybody, and how fast it grew, and the worldwide appeal of the Premier League. I mean, it's a vast difference. And from a playing standpoint, the pace of the game was just it's just everything just has to be a little bit quicker. And I'm sure they're working on that because they know that that's what's going to be. They're just, there's no weaknesses in many of these teams. And even the weaker teams in the division are full of internationals and great players. It's a wonderful league. It was an absolute honor to play in that first game in the inaugural year with Ipswich Town.
Because that's probably another thing now, isn't it? Like going back to then when it started, and you didn't have the amount of foreign players coming in. That was sort of then that grew, didn't it? And then you got, if you look nowadays, you've got obviously teams. A lot of teams haven't even got an English player in the starting 11. Craig.
Well, that's right. There was only 13 foreigners that started the inaugural day on that Saturday, which at that point I'd already been in England for 8 years. A lot of people forgot that I was actually Canadian, but
so that first season, I always remember. So we're getting on to obviously Ipswich. I don't know if you know much about Halaki, the goalkeeper. He now it's got parallels a little bit with yourself, because obviously that first season in the Premier League, you started as number one. Then you got sent off against Sheffield United, didn't you?
That's right.
The home game.
Yeah,
lost your place.
Little John, I pulled down. Well, he went like a helicopter. He was moving.
You can see that on YouTube. If you actually go and look for it, he literally goes flying through the air, doesn't he?
Yeah. And I remember Frank Gallup he was injured and he wasn't at the game yet. So he was pulling in late, and he comes through where the dressing room is, and somebody says, your mate's in the shower. And he's like, he remember walking in the shower. He said, what are you doing in here?
I think it's only about 5 or 6 minutes into the game, wasn't it? Because
that was early.
Eddie Howard's got hauled off. I think they did say that was one of his best games for Town. 6 minutes in, he went off, and obviously Clive Baker came on, and then you didn't get your place back. Now this goes back to the start of obviously the Championship season, and Christian Walton had been the number one for Town all through the Championship. Won the Golden Glove. Gets an injury pre-season. Craig doesn't get back into the team. The only time he played a minute in the Championship was about 2 minutes when he came on in that Huddersfield game. Kieran brought him on right at the end. He played a couple of cup games. That was it. So you've gone from your number one, like you did, and then you're not playing. How do you deal with that mentally? Because obviously you're training all week, playing on a Saturday, and then you've gone from playing all through the Championship season, winning the league, getting promoted, 5 or 6 games in, you've got sent off, then you've got suspended, and then you don't get your place back.
Yeah, it's not a great position to be in. I mean, when you're an out player, at least you can fill a gap somewhere else. If you play another position or move you around, you got that potential. But goalkeepers, you don't, and it's kind of the nature of the beast. And when somebody goes in and does well, you know they're going to stay in. Generally, that's the way it is. And that was always the way it was in my career. And it's the best way for managers to work that way. I always got along with 99% of the goalkeepers that I ever work with too. I mean, absolutely fantastic, and close to a lot of them. It's interesting because you're kind of competing, but you're not, because it's not, you working hard as the next person, but it's up to the manager who makes that decision. And you kind of, you're not going to be bitter to the other goalkeeper because of it,
Because I suppose you're a little bit of a different breed, aren't you? You're away probably from the other group doing your session with your goalkeeper coach. Now you have, like, when Town come out, there's always your main goalkeeper, your sub goalkeeper. You have your third goalkeeper, Kieran Slicker. He's a young goalkeeper, Scottish under-21, but he never plays. He's involved in the warm-up, and that's it. But like you say, you've got to have that support group for your fellow goalkeepers, because obviously you want to play. I get that. But you don't want him to have a bad game, do you? Because you want to try and support him as best as you can.
Yeah, you spend an awful lot of time with each other. You really do. And you're right. You're sort of alone with each other, and your lives can be quite miserable if you were that way inclined. But generally, the guys were great. And I remember working with Richard Wright when he was 12 years old, I believe he was at the time. And I remember talking to Phil Parks at the time, and I was like, this kid's going to play for England one day. Like,
could you tell that back then when he was 12?
Yeah, honestly, he wouldn't have looked out of place when he was 12 or 13 years of age on the pitch. He could strike a ball well enough. It wasn't like he was weak in that sort of area. He's good with his feet.
Question here from Simon on the screen. Craig, great to see you. What advice would you give to current players about handling the pressure of playing in the Premier League?
Oh, try not to take it home with you.
It's hard now because I suppose now it's everywhere in it. You've got social media. Obviously, you've got programs on the radio, podcasts like this. It's everywhere, football. How can you get away from it, Craig? Because I know when players say, I don't read the papers, human nature sometimes, when you've had a bad game, sometimes you might think, what are people saying about me? I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I think human nature sometimes must think, I'll just have a look at that.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I'm sure there's lots of players that have sort of looked and started scrolling down on the social media thing and getting hammered. That's one thing. I mean, like I said, the Premier League is just another stratosphere as far as attention goes. I remember when Shaka Hislop went to Portsmouth when they were in the championship, and he actually said, it's kind of refreshing to be away from the Premier League in some ways for players because of the attention and everything else. And sure enough, they got promoted back into it. But
well, it's funny you say that, because obviously we've been away for so long, and then we get promoted. And then, like we said about Kieran McKenna, all eyes are on him. You've got teams wanting your manager. So it must be hard. I've got a question here from Mike D, who's gets involved in the show. Question for Craig. Watching Halaki last season, as well as all the modern keepers, using your feet is now a priority in modern football. How do you think you'd cope in today's game? And do you think, with a lack of wing play now, that the art of catching is becoming a dying art? Because people don't put crosses in now, do they? They pass, get down to the byline, we'll start again and go back.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. You see more and more goalkeepers palming things away and getting so used to that. Was it the Czechia goalkeeper yesterday?
Yeah,
the header down at his feet, everything he palms away, whether it's a corner or whether it's a shot on target. And when you get one, when you have to hold it, you're just so used to palming everything away, he palms it right back into danger. You just have to be able to at this level. I mean, the pressure is immense, of course, but you have to be able to bring that in softly. I remember Phil Parks, even when you were training with Big Phil and he retired for a few years, he was in training, and watching a big man like that and how he could absorb a ball was just it was an art form.
What about with your feet? How do you think you'd get on playing with your feet?
Well, I mean, Ipswich is quite progressive. Even going back, we're talking about Pete Trevivian and your top there. We always played and had played a certain amount of time out in training sessions, 5-a-sides. And I enjoy doing that anyway, because I always thought it was, you do have to do that from time to time. And then when it came in, there was a bit of a panic, but more so for the defenders and when to pass it back, and that they could pass it back, and then maybe putting it into a tighter position for you and things like that. The pitches were a big factor. They were poor back then. You would play on, by the time it was January, February time, the pitches were pretty dug up. But these new hybrid pitches that they put in. They don't cut up. Your knees going into it, it's not going to leave a big divot. So it is that alone has changed the game and how confident you are being able to keep the ball inside your 6-yard box at times.
Yeah, because you can trust it. Obviously, you can trust the surface, and you see like all these goalkeepers even in the Euros now. You've got Georgia and all these countries. They're all playing from the back, Craig. None of them now get the ball, hit the centre forward. They're all wanting to play, don't they?
Yeah, and that the rule of being able to play it inside the box is too, because otherwise, if you had to play it outside the box, you could close that down. And teams back in the day that wanted to do that, if you wanted to stop them, you just put pressure on them, and then there's no way you could actually do that. But now it's a case of dragging and creating more space, and it's Pep has done that, really changed the game.
Is that where it's come from? Do you think Pep? That's why he's put that blueprint out, and obviously even when we were in League One, Craig, the majority of teams in that league back in the day, like you say, you get the ball, the goalkeeper get it, he'd lump it 70 yards. They're all wanting to play, even in that league when the pitches are not as good as, like obviously in the Championship, in the Premier League. They're all wanting to play out from the back. Yeah,
and with a goalkeeper and how important it is to be good with your feet. Like I look at Ederson, and I'm not sure he's the best shot stopper in the world, but what he does have is the ability to come up with the saves, but use his feet really well and has an incredible range. So that's what he was looking for. And when they played, I think it was Benfica, they played in a friendly, and he saw the range he had and what he's like, yeah, that's what I need. I remember he assisted on Aguero a few times on goal kicks and things like that. It's like
playing with an extra outfield player, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, he can layer up at one step and he can hit it 80 yards.
Not a long ball, long pass, isn't it? He's not just picking it anywhere. He's picking somebody out. Properly.
No, yeah. Mine would be like it would have snow on it and there would be 3 defenders around it.
Talking of snow and obviously Canada, Bury St Edmunds Blue says in the chat, am I right in thinking Craig was an ice hockey goalkeeper before playing football, or did I just make that up?
Oh, he's probably thinking of Petr Cech.
He plays now. He plays ice hockey, doesn't he?
He does play.
Did you play ice hockey when you were younger? Obviously, you must have done.
I did, yeah. I did. But I wasn't in goal, funny enough, because the way hockey was back then for goaltenders there were smaller pads, leg pads. So they had shorter guys would play. So their shoulders were kind of lower to the crossbar, and they were all stand-up goalies. And the game has completely changed now, where all the goalkeepers and tenders in the NHL are all 6'5", 6'6", who can go down into what they call a butterfly position with these stacked pads that are like 1.5 feet high, and their torso is still under the crossbar. Right?
What is that you've got in your hand there? Is that one of them vapes?
No, this isn't a vape. No, this is my mic. It's just broken.
Oh, you've got a mic. Anyways, another question from James Sargent. I was going to say, I did think you vape. Does Craig think Pickford is England's number 1, or would he choose someone else?
I don't think he's ever let England down.
No, he hasn't.
Right? Yeah, he feels every time I think of the England squad and he's in it, I don't sense any problems. I'm pretty confident with him to play well, and playing for a club like Everton, he's obviously going to have more.
There's a great question in there. Obviously, Town back in the Premier League, and now we get Panini stickers back, Craig. Do you remember Panini stickers back in the day? There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Are they back? Come on, they're not back.
Yeah, Panini stickers. They do them now. So Matt Stannard says, my random question is, does Craig have any Panini stickers of himself? Now we're back in the Premier League. My boys are excited. They can get Ipswich Town match attacks. So they're another cards that we do. Have you got any stickers of yourself?
I have. I'm sure I have Panini stickers somewhere.
I think I remember I did have an album maybe from about 84, 85, and there might have been one of you. I think you had a lovely mane of hair in it.
Oh, yeah.
Great. But that's another thing back in the Premier League. We get all this. Look, we haven't had it for so long. Right, what else have I got?
My mullet was. I think I put too much product in my hair and it all fell out.
Well, it affects us all, doesn't it, as we get older. So another thing, Town, we have to encounter, and we've never encountered this, Craig. And I've been watching the Euros, and I think they're implementing it better than we do. Is VAR. Now, we've been to games. I've been to games for years. You go to a game, you score a goal, you celebrate with your mates, knowing it's a goal. You can celebrate. Like some of them games towards the end of the season, if you remember the Sarmiento, when we beat Southampton and we scored in the 97th minute. I mean, I've never seen scenes like that at Portman Road, probably ever. But if we're in the Premier League next season, you're going to have to wait. You probably celebrate initially, and then because every goal gets checked, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what to think. But he did say about the Euros, right?
Yeah.
The year I thought exactly the same thing. I like the offside. Some of them they're fairly tight. It's like bang, done. It's like come on, no, don't quit fucking around. Let's get
because they've got that new
game.
automated system. They're gonna. That's not to start with in the Premier League. It's going to come in, I think, in the autumn. So there's no lines on your screen in the Euros. It's like that 3D image, isn't it? You can see even if your foot's that much offside. There's literally no doubt. Whereas I've seen back in the Premier League, and you're thinking, how have you've drawn that line from his shoulder down, and you're thinking, this is something we're just going to have to get used to because it's part of the game. Obviously, Wolves, they voted on it at the Premier League AGM, Wolves, because obviously they had quite a lot of bad decisions against them, and they were the only club, Craig, that voted against it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a place for it. I really do. They've got to do a better job of it. I thought they did a fairly good job.
How do we in the UK? I've watched the last World Cup when it was in, and I've watched this Euro so far. It's a lot quicker. They get all the decisions right. It's the way it's implemented for me over here. Sometimes when you're waiting 3 or 4 minutes, it's got to be quicker. It has to be slicker. You can't be waiting around another thing in the ground. People don't know what's going on because obviously they don't show it on the screens. I don't think they're allowed to show that because obviously, if you've got a controversial incident, it's not going to be great and it might cause a little bit of unrest in the stands. But that's the thing for me. You're paying a lot of money to go to games and you don't know what's going on.
That's right. They've tried to implement here in Major League Soccer in North America, and it seems to be working fairly well. With the referees mic'd up. So when there's a decision made, they come on the mic and they actually say what and why the decision has been made that way. So it keeps the fans a little bit more in the loop of what's going on. It is frustrating, and I think you're right. It's just the way they've implemented it in the Premier League. It's just been atrocious and way too long. I mean, some of them have lasted like 5 minutes or something like that. It's just that's completely unnecessary. And as well as I think they should change the offside rule to the point where there should be daylight between the striker and the defender.
That's the rule that Arsene Wenger wanted to bring in, didn't he? He was. I don't disagree with that. Question here from Dominic. What was Craig's favourite goalkeeping jersey he wore?
Ooh.
Because they've changed goalkeeping jerseys now from when you wore them with the padding.
Yeah.
The material.
I think most people think you get to choose your goalkeeper jersey. You really don't. They just show up at the start of the season. You might have 2 or 3 different ones, and here's your main one, and this is the one the manufacturer wants you to wear, and that's kind of how it goes, no matter whether it looks like shite or not. I do remember back. I remember those going back when I arrived at the club in '84, and they had the Adidas ones. And Paul Cooper had this. They weren't made of like polyester; they were cotton, and they were going through a hot wash and a hot dry. And this XXL thing was just—it was like a small boys on Paul Cooper, and he would have to stand on it and pull it. I had to too, because if you look at some of the pictures, even when I signed for Town, I'm putting my arms up on the crossbar, and my sleeves aren't even close to my wrists.
Obviously, nowadays, all these shirts are all there. Well, for fans, they're not great, Craig, because you get like your player editions, they're quite tight. Obviously, when you used to play, you got a bit baggier and you got the sleeves. I remember I think it was the Umbro one you used to wear. It was like, that was in the Premier League. It's sort of a grey, bluey, it had Fisons on it. It was all different colours.
Yeah. And who was that? They had the logo right in the middle. There was one too. That was nice.
Were they quite warm to wear? They look like they're quite heavy sort of material, whereas nowadays they're obviously quite lighter, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They are quite warm.
And a lot of goalkeepers now wear short sleeves, don't they? Would you have been short sleeve wearer if you could?
Yeah, I would have done. Yeah, I would have done that.
There you go. So it's Scotland 1-1 currently against Switzerland. For anyone wanting to know, right? Colin says in the chat, we will do some predictions a bit late. Where do you think Town are going to finish next season in the Premier League? There you go.
16th.
Wow. Hard to tell at the minute because obviously we haven't signed any players. But we would all take 16th, wouldn't we, Craig?
Yeah, no kidding. Take
we
17th.
We wouldn't even bother turning up, would we? If they said to us we could have we could have 17th on the first day of the season, we'd all shake hands. Thank you very much, and we'll see you.
You never know. You never know. I think we went 8 games in '92 right off the top without losing. I think we lost our first game to Oldham, I want to say, or something like that.
We were very good that first season in the Premier League until we just past Christmas time when we got involved. We got into the quarterfinals, didn't we? Both cups, FA Cup and League Cup. Yeah. I think did that have a little bit of an effect, maybe? Took your eye off the ball? Because I think we were when we beat Man United that time when Frank scored, when we won 2-1, I think we were 3rd in the league then? 4th in the league?
Yeah. I know. I remember walking around town and there was, come on, you're gonna win the league, It was like, hold your horses.
But you do never know, because obviously the last time we were in the Premier League under George Burley, we finished 5th.
I know.
But I think them sort of days and like when Leicester's won the league, Craig, a few years ago, I think they're going to be really few and far between now, aren't they?
Well, Leicester was 5,000 to 1. I mean, that was that's technically going by that. It's going to happen once every 5,000 years. So we've had it, but that was amazing. Right. And I think the league is better for it. It's nice to see other teams up there challenging, and we have. I mean, it's incredibly competitive, the Premier League.
Here you go. Bury St Evans Blue. Can Craig please have a word with Alphonso Davies and get him to Portman Road? What a player he is.
Yeah, he's got a better chance of going to Real Madrid, I think. But
yeah, don't think we're quite going to be in the market for him.
Spending that kind of money, could have probably could have had him 4 years ago when he was at the Whitecaps. Initially, you probably could have had him for a couple million, probably.
How much now would he be worth?
Oh boy. Well, this is the thing. He's on a free transfer at the end of next year. Bayern Munich wants something for him now, so I'm not sure Real Madrid's willing to pay. They might wait for him to be on a free next year.
Get him on a free. He might want to wait as well because he'll get a nice signing on fee, won't he? Obviously, if he goes to Madrid. Join up with
seriously, like 70, 80 million? Like, I mean,
Ipswich Town's transfer record, Craig, is still 4.5 million. It was Matteo Serini, another goalkeeper, when we were back in the Premier League in 2001. I mean, this summer, surely Town will smash that easy, won't they?
Yeah, because, for a hammer thrower, you pay 5 million.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy money. And look, we've got to get our heads around now that we are in the Premier League. Look, we're not going to spend loads. We're going to have to add probably 8 to 10 players, I would have thought, Craig, into the team, because what we don't want to lose is we've got that brilliant team spirit under Kieran, haven't we, from the last 2 seasons. But the step up from, obviously, League One to Championship, we've managed that seamlessly. And there was, I think, the Huddersfield game, there was 8 players who played in that final game who played in League One. But obviously, the step from the Championship to the Premier League, it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But you're right about that, that bond that the team has had, and you don't want to break that up that much. And at the same time, if you go up and come down, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you don't get quite the parachute payment either, because you could look at some clubs, and if you don't overspend and leave yourself in a good position, that you can be stronger the next time you go up, if you know what I mean. And this is what I think their goal is. It's like I said, they used to be able to hold on to players, lower division teams, and like Ipswich, and they can't do that anymore. So that's just the world they live in. So you have to come up with something else, because you can't bitch about it, because it's just the way the world is. So you have to come up and be creative of how you approach the game, how you go up. Like Brentford did. They just said, you know what, get rid of the youth team. I mean, what's the point of Brentford in amongst these massive clubs? What chance do you have of picking up a good kid in the youth team? Forget about it. Just get all the kids that they don't keep. And
when they've obviously got a lot of London teams right on it, like Chelsea right on their doorstep. And like you say, they're going to hoover up all them good kids. So Academy went, and I was listening, I think it was Kieran Maguire, the football money expert. He was on about Brentford. First season, Craig, in the top flight, I think highest paid player, 30,000. Next season, 40,000. Next season, 50,000. So it's them gradual steps, isn't it, that If we can stay in there for one season,
yep,
and then in that transfer market, you can attract that little bit better player. You can pay an extra, probably a few million, can't you? And this is how you obviously going to progress. But it's going to be so hard. I think it was Bournemouth. If you look at Bournemouth, I think they had to go down to come back up.
Yeah.
And then I think, what did they finish last season? 11th. I mean, Bournemouth, Craig, have got a stadium that holds 11,000.
It's incredible. Yeah. So that's sort of the models you have to look at to try and do it. I mean, look at the Championship and the Division 1. They're just littered with teams that have been in the Premier League and had their moments, so it's very difficult and it's hard to sustain. I mean, the 3 teams that went up last year all came down.
You look at the amount of goals that they conceded. I think Sheffield United, it was over 100.
Yeah.
And I think combined, it was probably about nearly 250 goals. So that's probably, I don't think Town are going to have a problem scoring goals, because I think we scored nearly 200 goals the last 2 seasons. It's going to be at the other end, isn't it? Stopping them.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to mention the Man United game when you let 9 in. We won't go there tonight. We've done that. You must get asked that every single time when you talk about Ipswich.
Yeah. And then it was, do you remember the game after that? It was Spurs away and Klinsmann up top. Like, it was like, oh my God.
Yeah, because when I was listening to your podcast, and Milt said he didn't play in the game at Man United because George said, yeah, you've not had a reserve game. And then he said on the Tuesday night, he was playing against Spurs, and he didn't have a reserve game. He just chucked him straight in. I mean, what was he like playing? What was that like playing against someone like Jurgen Klinsmann?
Oh, well, I mean, his movement is unbelievable off the shoulders of defenders. His timing of running, movement off the ball, and then his finishing was just lethal. I think he scored pretty early in that game too. I was like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah, he got away with it. He only lost 3-0 that night.
Was it only 3? I want to.
Yeah, it was only 3. It was only 3. It was. So we got Colin in the chat says, where are we? Random question: who does Craig think that is today's Eric Cantona? He was a player, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. A player with attitude. Just this. When when he chips it in the goal from at Old Trafford.
Well, if you're playing with your collar up, Craig, you've got to be a pretty decent player, haven't you?
Oh, it's back then for sure. Your collar up, and if you didn't have black shoes, you're gonna get kicked.
Did you play against him for Leeds when he was at Leeds?
I did, yeah.
Did you play in when we beat them 4-2 at Portman Road? Did you play in that game?
Yeah, I did.
Walkie got 2. I remember that because they'd obviously won the league. They won the last First Division, didn't they? The old First Division. Leeds had won that. And then it was the Premier League the next season.
That's right. They were stacked.
And then he went to United, didn't he? For what, $1 million? Was it $1 million they signed him, Cantona?
Yeah, it was cheap.
I mean, what would he be worth in today's market?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I think they were worried about his kung fu kicks of fans and things like that. I mean, when you brought Cantona, there was a bit of baggage coming with it. Yeah,
he was obviously he was a bit lively, wasn't he? So let's go through.
Let's have a look. Alex Ferguson to keep control of him.
Let's have a look at the first 10 games, right? And we'll get your predictions. How many points you think Town are going to take, Craig, from the first 10? So, right, we'll go through them. So, first game is Liverpool. How do you think we're going to get on? First game of the season.
Draw.
Right. So we go 1 point for Liverpool. I'll tell you how many I got when you get to the end. Should we just write the second game off at the Etihad against Man City?
Just put a 0 there.
Yeah, because
that's a
Fulham at home. Obviously, there's going to be certain games here that we are going to have to target to get 3 points, and Fulham's probably going to be one of them, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because we could be going into the third game and we could have had 2 defeats, which, I don't know if you know this, Kieran McKenna has never had back-to-back league defeats at Ipswich Town, Craig.
Well, he won't either if they get a point against Liverpool.
Well, let's hope that's... I went for a point against Liverpool. What are you going to go against Fulham?
3 points.
Yeah, it's got to be a win in it at Fulham. So into September, we've got back-to-back away games. We go to Brighton away and then Southampton away. What about them two?
Get a point from one of those.
Yeah, I went for a defeat at Brighton and I went for a point at Southampton. So I think we're probably on the same page. Aston Villa at home. Next game.
Draw.
Where are we? Aston
That'd
Villa.
be a good draw. That would be a good point against Villa. I mean, they're...
And then October, we go to your old club, West Ham United at the London Stadium. I've never been there.
Sit right on the fence. Draw.
Oh, I think we'd all take a draw there.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but I've obviously seen it on the telly, and it looks as though you're quite away from the pitch there, aren't you? Because you obviously got that running track.
Yeah.
Upton Park.
It's not Upton Park. No.
Upton Park, one of my favourite grounds. I remember going there in the playoffs. It was when Joe Royal was in charge. I think it was about 03, 04. It was a night game, Craig. I think it was 35,000 would they get in there? Full house?
Yeah, about there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the best.
Horrendous place to play. I mean, I played there with Ipswich away and had Ludic McCloskey dropping these bombs right on top of the 18-yard box. Just so close to the back of the net. It was frightening. I mean, it's a perfect football stadium. Loved it. But I mean, it was falling apart, whatever, all that. But and then playing there, the atmosphere when you're doing well at Upton Park was special as well.
Bubbles when you come out.
Lots of bubbles.
So you've gone for a draw there. Then we have got Everton at home, which I think, if you look at the last couple of seasons, they've been in the relegation mix, haven't they? So they're probably a team. Look, they could be under new ownership, Craig. I think obviously it's their last season. You obviously played at Goodison, didn't you?
Oh yeah,
great stadium.
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, another fantastic football stadium.
But it's probably run its course, hasn't it? As obviously, like as teams progress, it's sad in a way that these teams have to move away from these stadiums. You got so many memories there, but I suppose like West Ham, what do West Ham get at the Olympic Stadium now? 60,000 on a match day.
I think
yeah. So it makes sense commercially, doesn't it? You have to.
Yeah, and you can get a season ticket there for relatively cheaply compared to what it used to be because of the size of the stadium.
So Everton at home, are you going for a win there?
I'd like to think so, but anything there, I'll take a draw.
You're not getting many wins. You're not getting many wins here. Brentford away.
There's 3 points.
Oh, here we go.
Our first away win.
And the last game of the 10 is obviously Leicester promoted. I think, I'm not sure when it comes in, Craig. They are going to get a points deduction because obviously financial irregularity. So I see there's news today. They did think Graham Potter was going to be the manager. I think he's turned them down. And now they reckon Steve Cooper's going to be getting the gig, the old Forest manager. So Leicester away of the 10. What are you going for?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them and who departs out of Leicester. I mean, they've been in financial. This was coming. This was coming. Which is actually, hey, if they take points off and they've been doing things wrong as far as the rules go, well, and that's not bad for Ipswich Town either.
No, we'd take
put them 10 points behind us right out of the
gate. Nothing against Leicester. We got nothing against Leicester. Great football club, but if you start on -10. That does help us out. So what are you going
Man
for?
City might start at -30 and then we're trying to catch.
Right, let's talk quickly about Man City. Will they ever, Craig, get points deducted?
I don't know. And then also if it happens, then all of a sudden you look back and you go, well, they just won the title again. And so how long is it?
But then you think if they take points, if they ever do get a points deduction, them titles that they've won over the last 4 years, they could take them off them. I don't think it will ever. I don't think it'll ever happen.
Happened to Juventus in Italy.
Yeah, it did, but I mean, it just seems to me you've got City. They've got obviously powerful lawyers.
I think you're right there. I think they've got the best money can buy lawyers.
Yeah, so
they are burying this, and this thing is going to take it's taking forever, and that's what their game plan is.
Anyway, getting back to Leicester, win, lose or draw.
Draw.
Right. So 10 games, 30 points. 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12. You've got the same as me. I did say 12. I went 12 points from 10 games. And just for a bit of fun also, we will do the last 5 games. So Town could be in a relegation scrap. We could be pushing for the Europa League. Who knows, Craig? Nobody knows at this stage where we will be. So the last 5 games is Newcastle away, Everton away, Brentford home, Leicester home, West Ham last game of the season at home. You're probably going to go for a draw of that and sit on the fence. So 5 games.
They can get 7 points. 7 points.
I went for 8. So under your... So that's 15 games. You've got 19 points already for you and 20 for me. So we're probably only going to need, another 15 points from the remaining 23 games? That's doable, isn't it? Surely.
Exactly. Yeah, you need less than a point these days to stay up.
Looks great on paper, doesn't it? Looks great on paper. And
doesn't it ever?
When you get to the first game against Liverpool, and it's probably going to obviously be a little bit different. Right, I want to talk about Liverpool before we close. Obviously, we're playing Liverpool, first game of the season. Talk to me about the FA Cup replay at Anfield. I didn't go that night. I remember watching on Sky. It was back then, because nowadays, Craig, teams, they don't really want to get involved in cups, do they? Because football's totally changed, hasn't it? You get teams now who are sitting comfortably in the middle of the Premier League. They'll change all 11. And probably Town next season. FA Cups, League Cups, we're probably not going to be that bothered. I mean, even if you look at this season, it's in hindsight, the defeat to Maidstone, Craig, probably done us a favour, didn't it?
Exactly. I thought the same thing. As bad as it was at the time, a couple of weeks later, you're going, it's a bit of a godsend, really. And you know what? You're right. As far as the Premier League status is the most important thing. It's 1, 2, and 3, and then the league, the cups are great, but we're relegated after winning the FA Cup. Remember that year? And it's like,
But then you've always got that. You've always got that on your honours. And as a fan, you've had that day out at Wembley and you've beaten Man City, and it was unbelievable. I remember watching it, thinking, "How have they beaten Man City?" But you always have that memory. So it's a little bit like nowadays. It's obviously worth more to a club, isn't it? Staying in the Premier League, but a fan, I think you're a little bit different as a fan, Craig, because you followed them all your lifetime, and you'll have a memory there that lasts forever, won't it? When you won the FA Cup.
Right. And honestly, as a player, I mean, it obviously meant more, I guess. The FA Cup back in the day, it certainly did, but it was so important to us and players. We love the cup runs.
But did that momentum, help you in the league that season?
I don't recall. I don't recall. I mean, really, where those cup runs can hurt you, or a team is with somebody that doesn't have the depth to deal with that.
Mike D says in the chat, remember the home side was 0-0 in a hurricane. It was windy that day. Very windy.
We were so on. Warkey hit the crossbar with the wind behind, from 6 yards out, and nearly took the net off. Remember that?
That was Churchman's end, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were unfortunate. We had better chances in that game to win. And obviously, going back to Anfield ended up being quite a classic, actually.
They won the cup that year. I think they beat Sunderland in the final that year, Craig.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely. I think Jason Dezelle, I think he hit the post in the second half at the North Stand end. It was very, very windy that day, and then obviously went to Anfield. We all remember the Gavin Johnson header, don't we? What a goal that was! What a goal!
It was magnificent.
And obviously, we'd never won at Anfield.
Well, we have now.
But we hadn't back then. And when we went 2-1 up in extra time, at the Cop end, Jason scored, didn't he? And you're thinking, this was like on Sky. You're thinking we're going to beat them. And then I remember the free kick, right? Jan Mulvey scores. I don't think it's a foul in the first place. I think it's Steve McManaman gets fouled.
Right, okay. I don't remember who got fouled, but I remember right on the top of the box.
But if you watch that back, where he's fouled, and where Mulby takes that free kick from, it's about 4 yards further forward than where the foul was taken.
Is that right?
Yeah. And
That's interesting.
he pings it, and he right in the top corner.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it was Mickey Stockwell, as it was the bullet man on the end of the wall, who charged it, and he turned to block it, and it just went straight through his legs, and there was a camera, I remember, right in that top corner, and it just smashed the camera. Yeah, Mulby, I mean, Jesus Christ, he could hit that thing. He could hit that ball, and from like 18 yards, it was past me in a flash. And
then obviously Steve McManaman got the winner, didn't he? Not long after that. I think it was not long after that, was it? He beat a couple of men, and then I think he was in from the angle, and he just chipped it past you, didn't he?
Yeah. I always thought Mulby's was the third, but I mean, I might have that wrong. But
yeah, that was the equaliser. Mulby's was 2-2.
So it was actually after when we went up there and beat them 1-0 with Adam Tanner's goal, right?
No, that was so this was 91-92. That was the relegation season, wasn't it, when we won at Anfield when Adam Tanner scored?
Yeah.
No, it was 94 and 95. I mean, terrible season that season, and you've never won at Anfield, and then we go and beat Liverpool 1-0. It was a great goal, wasn't it, Adam Tanner? Right in the top corner. And then I remember, obviously, we beat them 1-0 under George Burley when Marcus Stewart scored. So you never know. Can we complete the hat-trick this season? I think we actually played there, Craig, at Anfield on my birthday in January, and I think it might be moved because, obviously, European football, but...
Right.
Look, it's going to be really tough, isn't it, this season in the Premier League? But I think, as a fan base, we just have to enjoy it.
Exactly. And he's going to have some really good days, and they're going to be in the hunt right to the very end, I think. So, it is what it is. And, up until I think it was Villarreal, Ipswich was the smallest town to have ever won a major European trophy. It's incredible, like I said, of what that Ipswich town have done and where they punch so far above their weight. It's frightening. And they've just done it for ever and ever. And here we are back again. And with Ed Sheeran behind us, and who could have a better guy? He's awesome.
Did you see the celebrations when he was with the players? I mean, there's a video there. I don't know why. They've obviously had quite a lot of alcohol at this stage, Craig. They're in the toilet with Ed Sheeran singing.
Yeah, like what the fuck? I think I saw Ed Sheeran. He was at like the gala in New York City or something, or LA. I don't know where it was, looking all dapper and doing with his thing. And then it was like 2 days later, he's in the bathroom singing with the lads. I was like, well, how did they end up in the toilet? And
it was obviously in Halesworth where they went, a place right out the way. But yeah, that was the most random thing I see from that night. It was great. They were all in the bar singing. Connor Chaplin was getting on the mic, and then I'm thinking, what the hell were you lot doing in the toilet?
Singing maybe the acoustics.
But well, maybe it was better in there. But
I mean, it's better when I sing in the bathroom.
Well, I don't want to know what you do in the bathroom, Craig.
I sing a lot.
It's great, isn't it, having someone of Ed Sheeran's stature, one of the global superstar. He's got his name on the shirt. He's got his box at the ground. Mm-hmm. And he's such a down-to-earth person, isn't he, really? You think... We met him away. I think it was, do you remember the 4-4 draw when we drew at Charlton in League One? We met him after the game there. We were just standing there around the back waiting for the players, and he just sort of came by. He took a photo on his phone, and one of my youngest said to him, "Can I have a picture with you?" And he took the phone off him, and he took about 5 pictures, got into his 4x4, and he was gone. But he's it's just amazing. I mean, just everything's going right at the minute, Craig. And I mean, it's like living. It is like living in a dream. As a town fan, these past 2 years, we've lost 10 games. We're going to have to get used to losing some games this season, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. But how exciting going to all these places and watching the Premier League is just insane. But you're right about Ed Sheeran. I mean, Ed Sheeran is that type of guy where, he's so likable and it's good for the club. It's good for them and the club to have him around. In Toronto, the Toronto Raptors NBA team here, they have Drake. And they give him a season ticket. He's courtside. He comes to a lot of the games. He loves the team. He's a sports fan in general. But they gave him his own box, and he's got his own club in there inside the arena, and it's great. His appeal and everything else, and his reach is it's in the modern day. It's good to have people like that.
Well, I think they've sold. I think Mark Ashton was saying like the 3 shirts we had last year. I think we'd sold over 60,000. And you see Ed doing his concerts all around the world, Craig, and he's got the shirt on. I mean, it's brilliant for Ipswich to get out there globally. We've got a question before we close in the chat from Matt Stanod. Will Craig make it over for a Premier League game?
I promise I'm going to come over for a Premier League game.
There you go. Anyway,
I was close to coming over for the last game of the season. I literally it was last minute, and things had opened up, and I talked to my daughter. I'm like, what do you think? Should we do it? It's going to cost a fortune, but I think we can do it. So I looked at it, and it was a 12:30 kickoff. Yeah. And just the way the flight was and when it was going to land on Saturday, there wasn't an awful lot of leeway. The last thing I wanted to do was show up like after the game, which would have still been fun. But if it was a 3 o'clock kickoff, I think I would have pulled the trigger and come over.
So the Liverpool game, the first game, 12:30 kickoff UK time. What time would that be in Toronto? Early hours.
7:30.
Would that be screened? Obviously, you'll be able to see all the town games out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, massive thanks for coming on, Craig. Hopefully, we can get you on again in the season.
Yeah,
get you on again. Tell everybody where they can find your podcast.
Yeah, I think we're Apple and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts, and it's Footy Prime, the podcast. We independent podcast here in Canada, and we really we're the top independent soccer podcast in Canada, and we got a couple of other players involved with it as well. Jimmy Brennan, former Norwich, but we have to take him on. But I know the Norwich thing isn't great, and Amy Walsh, former women international.
Hour and 2 minutes, and you had to mention Norwich.
Yeah, well, only because it's Jimmy, but you know what? He's a good lad. I can't hold it against him. I usually just talk about when he was at Forest or Bristol City.
Anyway, thanks for having you on. I think everyone really appreciates you coming on, Craig. The chat's been brilliant tonight. Give the show a like, everybody. Share it with your mates, and we will see you again on Sunday. All the best, Craig. Thank you.
Thanks. Congratulations. Happy birthday on your 4th.
Thank you.
You make me smile when I think of you. If I